Captain Mara Ives stood in the dim glow of the command center's holoscreens, the air thick with the hum of cooling fans and the faint metallic tang of recycled oxygen. Port Havel's orbital relay station felt like a coffin today, cramped, buried under layers of reinforced alloy, and far too close to the void where the alien ships loomed. Her boots scuffed against the grated floor as she paced, eyes locked on the incoming transmission feed. The crew around her, techs hunched over consoles, a few Marines in tack vests leaning against bulkheads, watched in silence, the weight of uncertainty pressing down like gravity debt. The alert chime cut through first, sharp and insistent. Then the screen flickered, resolving into a sterile blue interface stamped with unfamiliar glyphs. An alien envoy's voice followed, synthesized and flat, reciting in flawless English, transmission from the adjudicative concordance, declaration of war, 6 pages, sealed with biometric sigils of High Adjudicator Keth. Accompanying document, Commencement Form 89. Human recipients must acknowledge receipt and response within 72 standard hours to initiate formal adjudication. Failure to comply invokes auto-ratification clauses. Mara's jaw tightened as the files downloaded, pages unfurling like accusations in the air. She could see the seals pulsing faintly, organic, iridescent, as if alive. The declaration outlined grievances, human expansion into neutral zones, violations of interstellar pacts, resource hoarding that disrupted the Concordance's ordered equilibrium. It wasn't a rant, it was precise, legalistic. Each clause backed by citations from treaties humanity had signed decades ago in haste. War delivered not with missiles but with paperwork. She glanced at Lieutenant Reyes, her second, who was already pulling up Treaty Meridian protocols on his tablet. "Get the committee on the line," Mara said, her voice steady but edged with the gravel of too many sleepless shifts. "This isn't a drill." The UN Emergency Committee patched in within minutes, their faces a mosaic of grim holograms from bunkers across the system. Admiral Jonas Klein's image dominated the center feed, his uniform crisp despite the chaos rippling through the fleet. "Captain Ives," he said, his tone measured like a man weighing anchors. "We've reviewed the transmission. Under Meridian protocols, you and your legal attaché are appointed to receive and process. Port Havel's your ground zero. Hold the line, but don't escalate without clearance." Mara nodded, though her gut twisted. Appointed, as if this were an honor and not a noose. "Understood, Admiral. Who's my legal?" "Rao, Anil Rao, out of Geneva Station. He's en route now, ETA 2 hours. He's the best we've got for countering their bureaucratic traps. Treaty specialist, forensic filings. You two sync up, acknowledge the doc, and buy us time. Politics are a minefield. We can't afford to look like we're dodging law." She bit back a retort. "Politics, always the leash. Copy that, we'll handle it." The connection severed, leaving the command center quieter than before. Mara rubbed the scar along her jaw, a souvenir from a skirmish on Epsilon 4, where procedure had nearly gotten her squad vaporized. Her sister Lena was down in Port Havel's civilian sectors, hunkered in a shelter with 1,000 others. Mara had promised to keep the port intact, but promises were fragile things in a war started by ink. Anil Rao's shuttle docked with a shudder that rattled the station's struts. Mara met him at the airlock, sizing him up as the hatch cycled. He was wiry, mid-40s with sharp eyes behind wire-rimmed glasses and a tablet clutched like a shield. No uniform, just a rumpled suit that screamed bureaucrat, but his handshake was firm, calloused from something other than keyboards. "Captain Ives," he said, falling into step beside her towards the processing bay. "Heard you were the one holding the fort. Let's see this declaration." They reached the secure vault, a sterile chamber lined with scanners and null field emitters to block any embedded trackers. Mara initiated the biometric scan, her palm pressing against the reader until it beeped approval. The documents projected in midair, holographic pages turning with a flick of her finger. Anil leaned in, murmuring as he read. Clever. They've woven in escalation clauses, non-acknowledgement triggers, asset seizures, blockades. But look here, page 4, they're citing Meridian Annex 7, but they omitted the human ratification addendum from 47. Mara crossed her arms, watching him work. Can we stall it? Stall? We can fight it. His fingers danced over his tablet, pulling up cross-references, but before he could say more, the station's alert system wailed. A new broadcast overriding all channels. The holoscreens hijacked themselves, filling with the image of High Adjudicator Keth. The alien was a silhouette of elongated limbs and iridescent chitin, its face a mask of multifaceted eyes that gleamed under the light of its command ship. Its voice emanated from hidden speakers, cold and resonant, like stone grinding against stone. Human recipients of Declaration of War, this is High Adjudicator Keth of the Concordance. Be advised. Unsigned or unacknowledged declarations auto-enforce under Adjudicative Code 12-4. Orbital compliance units are deploying to facilitate ratification. Resistance to enforcement constitutes contempt of adjudication, punishable by immediate sanction. Order through law, law through order. The feed cut, leaving echoes in the air. Mara slammed her fist on the console. Compliance units? What the hell are those? Anil's face paled as he cross-checked. Automated enforcers, drones, basically legal drones. They seal sites, lock down comms, register populations as entries for adjudication. If they hit the embassy down on Port Havel? Mara was already moving, barking into her comm. Reyes, get me evac protocols, prioritize military assets, armories, fuel depots, the relay arrays. Shuttles launch in 30. The command center erupted into controlled frenzy. Orders flew, techs rerouting power, Marines hauling crates of munitions toward the bays. Mara oversaw it from the tactical map, her mind mapping the port's layout like a battlefield. Port Havel sprawled across the moon's surface, docks for cargo haulers, hab domes for 10,000 souls, and the embassy at its heart, a neutral zone relic from pre-contact days. But transport was the bottleneck. Only so many shuttles. And fuel rationed for the fleet's retreat vectors. Military first, that was doctrine, the hard calculus of survival. She tagged the sectors. Armories green, civilian zones yellow. Lena's shelter fell into yellow, squeezed between industrial pads and overflow barracks. Limited slots. Mara hesitated, thumb hovering over the finalize button, then pressed it. Mission over sentiment. Always. Captain, Reyes said, voice low as he reviewed the manifest. Civi sectors are at 40% capacity. Your sister's block, it's tight. I know, she said, not looking up. The words tasted like ash. Lena had begged her to pull strings, but strings snapped under weight like this. Get the assets out. We'll circle back for the rest. Anil watched from the sidelines, his tablet forgotten for a moment. He cleared his throat. We might not need to evac blind. Give me a line to the embassy's secure net. I can file something to jam their auto-enforce. Mara nodded curtly. Do it, but make it count. He retreated to a corner console, fingers blurring as he drafted. The request for burial permit was a stroke of mad genius, an obscure form from Annex 2, meant for ceremonial closures in treaty disputes. It cited a loophole. Any final adjudication required proof of deceased intent, which their war declaration lacked. Unsigned, it wouldn't hold, but filed as a counterclaim, it could trigger an extension review, buying hours, maybe days. Submitting now, Anil muttered, sweat beading on his forehead. The system whirred, packets firing toward the embassy's uplink. If their AI ratifies this, It stalls the compliance units. But Keth's people are sticklers. They'll scrutinize every comma. Mara didn't respond, her focus on the evac feeds. Shuttles were lifting off, bellies heavy with plasma rifles and shield generators. Alarms blared from the surface. Protesters in the civvy zones demanding seats on the birds. She could hear the chatter over open channels, families clustering at docks, children wailing as Marines turned them back. Then the sensors lit up. Orbital compliance units, sleek arrowhead drones, a dozen strong, descended from the alien blockade, their hulls etched with glowing sigils. They ignored the fleeing shuttles, zeroing in on the embassy like hounds on a scent. Mara patched into the ground cams just in time to see them deploy. The lead unit hovered over the embassy's dome, a mechanical arm extending with a stamp the size of a cargo pallet. It slammed down, the impact visible even from orbit, a ripple through the structure as the seal adhered, biometric ink spreading like frost. Remote access flatlined, embassy comms went dark, cut off from the port's net. On the surface, chaos unfolded in brutal clarity. Civilians near the perimeter, workers, diplomats, aides, froze as secondary units buzzed in low. The drones projected fields, holographic barriers snapping into place around the grounds. One worker, a burly engineer in grease-stained coveralls, lunged at the nearest unit with a wrench. The drone didn't fire, it scanned him, a beam of light etching his biometrics into the air. Citizen entry registered, its voice intoned, mechanical and indifferent, pending adjudication. He backed away, eyes wide, as the stamp bloomed on his forearm, a temporary mark, glowing faintly, tying him to the alien ledger. Others scattered, but the fields herded them, marking more. A woman clutching a child, a cluster of clerks spilling from side doors. The embassy sealed shut behind them, doors welding under the primary stamp's influence. Mara's comm crackled with ground reports. "Captain, they're locking it down. No one's getting in or out, and they're tagging anyone in range." "Understood," she said, her voice a whip. But inside, doubt clawed. Evac was half done, military safe, but the civvies. Lena's shelter was 2 clicks out, exposed. And Anil's filing, had it even registered? The console pinged, counterclaim acknowledged but under review. Not denied, but not granted. 72 hours ticking down, now with drones enforcing the clock. Anil looked up, his face drawn. "It's in their system, but Keth's broadcast. They're not waiting for reviews anymore." Mara gripped the console edge, knuckles white. The port's defenses hummed to life, point defense lasers tracking the units. But firing would void the treaties. Hand the aliens their casus belli. Earned defiance, her old squad leader used to say, not reckless fury. But as the stamps spread, marking her people like property, restraint felt like surrender. From the Admiral's feed, Klein's voice cut in, urgent. "Ives, report. What's the status on those units?" "Sealing the embassy, sir. Marking citizens. Rouse counter is filed, but it's not stopping them." A pause, heavy with calculation. "Hold fire. We're mobilizing counter-diplomacy, but if they push further..." She knew the rest. If they pushed, she'd choose procedure or protection. Her sister's face flashed in her mind, defiant even in fear. Mara straightened, signaling Reyes, "Prep the reserves. We're not losing the port without a fight." The drones hummed on, their seals glowing brighter, the war's first scars etching into human soil. Anil Rao paced the dim-lit warren of the Provisional Legal Ops Center, buried under Port Havel's administrative bunker. The air hummed with the low whine of overtaxed servers, pulling data from every treaty archive humanity had ever signed. His team, 6 sharp-eyed clerks, and 2 forensic paralegals he'd hand-picked from the Treaty Corps, huddled around holographic displays, fingers flying over interfaces that spat out reams of virtual parchment. The drones outside still buzzed, their alien seals casting erratic blue light through the reinforced slits in the walls. But down here the fight was fought with words, not weapons. "Layer it thicker," Anil said, his voice steady but edged with the fatigue of 18 straight hours. He leaned over Priya's station, watching her weave subclauses into a petition that mimicked the aliens' own ratification protocols. "We hit their cues with cross-references to the Orion Accords, then bury it under human sovereignty riders, make it so convoluted they can't process without looping back to us." Priya nodded, her dark eyes narrowing as she stamped a digital seal. Human first, then a forged echo of the alien glyph, pulled from intercepted transmissions. "This'll flood their system, sir, but if Keth's archivists flag it as frivolous, we risk escalation." Anil's jaw tightened. Frivolous, the word tasted like ash. He'd built this team on the belief that law was a blade, not a shield, but every cut demanded precision. His career hung on this, years of navigating interstellar bureaucracy, only to gamble it on paperwork as warfare. "Then we make it stick, cross-file under emergency injunctions. If they want war through writs, we'll drown them in ours." The team worked in grim rhythm, petitions stacking like ammunition crates. By dawn's false glow filtering through the bunker, they had a salvo, layered filings designed to jam the alien adjudication pipelines, forcing delays in every enforcement order. Anil uploaded the batch himself, watching the transmission ping toward the neutral relay stations. It was ingenuity born of desperation, humans turning the enemy's weapon against them, one clause at a time. But as the confirmations lit up, a knot twisted in his gut. This wasn't just clogging queues, it was poking a hornet's nest with a stick made of treaties. High Adjudicator Keth observed the human transmissions from the bridge of the adjudicant vessel Echelon, its vast chamber a sterile vault of pulsing data veins and archival nodes. The air was cool, laced with the faint ozone of processing arrays, and Keth's multifaceted eyes reflected the holographic cascade of incoming petitions. Doctrinaire patience defined the adjudicator's essence, law as the unyielding scaffold of order where discretion was obsolescence. These human filings were anomalies, procedural chaff meant to obscure the inevitable ratification. "Dispatch the enforcement brigades," Keth intoned, voice a resonant chime through the vessel's comms. No anger, only the mechanistic click of inevitability. The brigades, squads of enforcers clad in iridescent armor, armed with neural binders and catalog drones, materialized on the tactical display, vectoring toward Port Havel's diplomatic quarter. Keth's philosophy permitted no moral variance. The archive demanded totality. Human diplomats already marked as respondents in the declaration writ would be detained for testimony. Civilians en masse catalogued as pending evidence to expedite the war's legal foundation. It was not cruelty but calibration. Orders price, paid in identities reduced to entries. The 1st Brigade touched down under cover of atmospheric interference, their skimmers slicing through the pre-dawn mist. Diplomats in the port's envoy wing stirred from fitful sleep as binders hummed to life, projecting holographic warrants that bound wrists and silenced protests. "You are now evidence in adjudication prime," the lead enforcer droned, its voice filtered through a translator that stripped away inflection. One by one, the humans were scanned, their biometrics uploaded to the archive, queues swelling not with delay, but with the weight of impending enforcement. Captain Mara Ives crouched in the shadow of a derelict cargo hauler on the port's fog-shrouded outskirts, her breath fogging the night vision overlay of her helmet. The alien courier ship loomed ahead, a sleek, needle-nosed vessel etched with glowing seals, its landing struts sinking into the mud like accusations. Intelligence had pinpointed it. A carrier of fresh writs, enough to ratify the first wave of civilian cataloging. Mara's squad, 8 Marines, including Lieutenant Sato at her flank, moved like ghosts through the industrial sprawl. Rifles slung low, suppressors glinting under the sodium lamps. "Flank left, hold for breach," Mara whispered into her comm, her voice a gravelly anchor. Port Havel was her ground, her sister's home threaded through these streets like veins. She couldn't let those forms hit the queues unchecked. Her command instinct burned. Procedure be damned, protect what mattered. But doubt gnawed. Sato's easy grin earlier, sharing ration packs, now felt like a fragile thing under fire. They closed in, boots silent on the damp ferrocrete. Sato signaled from the starboard side, planting a mag charge on the hull. The explosion was muffled, a sharp cough that vented atmosphere and peeled back the access panel. Mara led the rush inside, the ship's corridors a maze of humming conduits and stacked data crates stamped with alien script. "Secure the bridge," she barked, sweeping her rifle through the sterile air. Resistance came swift. 2 enforcers materialized from alcoves, their binders firing neural pulses that sizzled against armor. Mara's team returned fire, precise bursts dropping one, but the second clipped Sato's shoulder, staggering him. He fired back, downing it, but as Mara pushed forward, a hidden drone swarm erupted from the ceiling, latching onto Sato with binding fields. "Lieutenant!" Mara lunged, but the fields yanked him into a side compartment, seals snapping shut. She hammered the panel, rounds pinging off reinforced alloy, but the ship shuddered, self-destruct protocols initiating. "Fall back, we've got the crates, exfil now." They dragged out 3 data crates heavy with sealed forms, Sato's absence a raw wound. Mara sealed the hauler's ramp as it lifted, the courier erupting in a pillar of flame behind them. Victory tasted like bile. She'd lost him to their cages, and the port's skyline now bore the scar of defiance. Admiral Jonas Klein stared at the tactical feed in the command carrier's CIC, the intercepted footage of Mara's raid, looping in holographic silence. Port Havel's defenses flickered on the overlay, alien signatures probing the edges. Klein's uniform felt too tight, his caution a weight that had kept the fleet intact through proxy skirmishes, but now politics loomed like a noose. International eyes watched, alliances fraying if he escalated without optics. "Calibrated response," he ordered, voice measured. "Target their relay drones only, no direct engagement with brigades. We file counter-protests through neutral channels." The bridge crew nodded, but Mara's voice cut through the comms, raw and unfiltered. "Admiral, they've got Sato. I'm not leaving him to their evidence lockup. Launching recovery op, teams deploying in 10. Klein's face hardened. "Negative, Captain. That's insubordination. Stand down or face court-martial." Static crackled, then her reply, "With respect, sir, the chain breaks when they start cataloging our people. We're doing this." The rift went public minutes later, leaked helmet cams hitting the nets, Mara's Marines rappelling toward the detention zones as Klein's orders broadcast restraint. Whispers rippled through the fleet, defiance or disaster. Klein gripped the console, his stake in institutional stability cracking under the weight. Post-war authority meant nothing if the war turned mutinous. Anil's Ops Center erupted in alerts as the courier crates unpacked, seals intact, writs primed for ratification, but accessing them meant concessions. He stood before the hololink to the Provisional Council, Priya at his side, the team's eyes on him. "We need those seals to forge counters," Anil said, his flaw laid bare, expedience over ethics. "Concede the civil rights clause, publicly acknowledge their cataloging as provisional to buy access. It's a trade, law for leverage." The counselor on screen hesitated, face lined with the war's early strain. That paints us as compliant. Civil rights groups will riot. Anil's motive burned. Out-argue the system. Save the career he'd staked on this team. Or we lose the port. Sign it. The clause went live. A bitter pill broadcast across human channels. Temporary recognition of alien procedures in exchange for operational seals. Anil's team dove in, replicating the glyphs to bolster their petitions, but the concession echoed. Trading law for time felt like surrender's first step, his credibility fraying even as the queues clogged further. From the adjudicant vessel, Keth monitored the human concession with detached approval, order progressing, variances folding into the archive. But the raid's theft complicated timelines. Replacement writs were en route, and the finality session loomed. Leaked intelligence be damned. It would ratify all executing registered civilians unless disrupted. Keth dispatched the archivists without pause. Deep in the vessel's core, the enemy archivists, ethereal drones linked to the greater network, began their work. Human identities flooded in from the brigades, scans of diplomats, then civilians pulled from port manifests. Families dissolved into case files. Mother, father, child, reduced to entries accelerating Keth's legal machinery. A worker from the docks, his wife and son tagged as collaterals. A teacher in the civilian zones, her roster of students indexed as witnesses. Each upload tightened the noose, timelines compressing as the archive wove chaos into order. Mara's recovery team hit the detention perimeter under a stuttering rain, the port's lights blurring into streaks. She'd disobeyed Klein, Marines loyal to her ground command slipping through patrols. Sato's face haunted her, his capture a personal failure, her inflexible drive pushing them into the fire. They breached a holding dome, binders humming inside, but enforcers swarmed. Pulses cracking against cover. "Contact left," one Marine yelled. Camaraderie forged in the chaos as they laid suppressing fire. Mara flanked, snagging a datapad from a fallen drone. Sato's file marked for transport. But the rift with Klein broadcast wider, fleets holding position as her op turned the war's first fracture public. Anil watched the feeds, his concessions buying seals but costing ground. The leaked intel hit his terminal. Finality session in 48 hours. Ratification and executions unless jammed. His team redoubled, petitions flying, but the archivists' indexing outpaced them. Families vanishing into files, the war's legal blade sharpening. Keth's chamber pulsed with the archive's rhythm, stakes rising as human defiance complicated supremacy. Order would prevail, but at what calibration? The drones outside Port Havel hummed louder, seals etching deeper scars, the neutral dawn breaking over a battlefield of words and wills. Captain Mara Ives gripped the edge of the tactical holotable, her knuckles whitening against the cool metal. The command bunker beneath Port Havel thrummed with the low vibration of distant artillery, a reminder that the aliens' legal siege was bleeding into open fire. Her team, hardened grunts from the 7th Recon, faces etched with fatigue, huddled around flickering projections of the alien archive outpost, a squat fortress of iridescent alloy perched on the ridge overlooking the civilian sprawl. "We hit it now," Mara said, her voice cutting through the murmurs like a knife. Direct raid, no more dancing around their filings. Drones for overwatch, ground team breaches the core vault. Primary target, the finality session data nodes. Blow them before they ratify another execution order. Lieutenant Torres, her second, shifted uneasily, his scarred jaw tightening. "Captain, that's deep in contested zone. Their sentinels are automated, lasers, kinetic barriers, and the civi blocks below. If the blast radius overrides the procedure," Mara snapped, though doubt gnawed at her gut like rust. her sister Lena's family sheltered in Block 14, right in the shadow of that ridge. Port Havel's defenders had funneled non-combatants there for safety, but safety was a lie now. Keth's archive turned every death into a legal anchor, chaining humanity tighter with each ratified casualty. If they didn't destroy those nodes, the next wave of adjudicated executions would include Lena's name, inked in alien script, unassailable. Torres nodded, swallowing his protest. The team mobilized in silence, camaraderie forged in the grit of shared impossibility. Mara watched them gear up, vests humming with charge packs, rifles sinking to her command net. Human ingenuity against the odds. Railguns jury-rigged for EMP bursts, exosuits patched with scavenged alien tech. No glory in it, just the raw defiance of survival. The raid launched at dusk, shadows cloaking the assault shuttles as they skimmed the debris-choked valleys. Mara monitored from the bunker, her breath shallow, eyes locked on the feeds. Breach successful. Her team slipped past the outer sentinels, breaching the vault with shaped charges. Inside, the air shimmered with holographic ledgers, endless scrolls of human fates etched in light. Nodes located, Torres whispered over comms. Setting demo packs. Then the world erupted. Alarms wailed as alien countermeasures triggered, a cascade failure in the archive's core. The detonation was meant to be surgical, but the infrastructure fought back. Reactors overloading in a chain reaction. Fire bloomed across the ridge, a searing orange bloom that swallowed the vault and spilled downward. Mara's console lit with alerts. Structural collapse. Block 14 engulfed. Screams filtered through civilian channels before cutting to static. Her vision blurred, hands trembling as she slammed the table. Lena, the cost hit like shrapnel. Her inflexible drive to protect the port had just vaporized the one family she couldn't lose. But the nodes were gone. Surveillance confirmed the finality data in flames. A Pyrrhic strike buying time at the price of blood. Across the neutral zone, in the shadowed spires of the alien delegation hub, Ambassador Rhee paced the antechamber to Keth's sanctum. The air hummed with the archive's perpetual pulse, a mechanical heartbeat that set her teeth on edge. Rhee had clawed her way to this post through backroom deals and whispered alliances, but now the web was closing. Port Havel's resistance had painted her as a liability, humans whispering of her soft stances on alien protocols. The inner doors parted with a hiss, revealing Keth's chamber, walls lined with crystalline data veins, the high adjudicator enthroned at a nexus of glowing filaments. Keth's form was a study in alien precision, elongated limbs folded like folded parchment, multifaceted eyes reflecting the room's light in cold prisms. No emotion, just the doctrinaire patience of one who saw law as the universe's spine. Ambassador, Keth intoned, voice a layered resonance through translators. Your petition for asylum accelerates. Present your calibration. Rhee's pulse raced, but she forced steadiness. In her satchel, a data chip burned like contraband, a stolen copy of Anil Rao's burial permit draft, the human countermeasure meant to clog the alien system with procedural backlog. She'd intercepted it through a mole in Rao's team. Her motive, simple, self-preservation. Betraying Rao would undermine his credibility, paint human lawfare as farce, and buy her a ticket out before the war consumed everything. I offer this, she said, sliding the chip across the polished dais. A draft from the human legal officer, Rao. It exposes their intent to subvert ratification via mass interment filings. In exchange, sanctuary, your word, adjudicator. Keth's eyes flickered, tendrils extending to interface with the chip. Data flowed, the archive absorbing the draft's intricacies. Accepted. Asylum ratified upon verification. This accelerates order. Ree exhaled, the betrayal settling like ash in her throat. Rao's team would crumble under the scandal, his public face shattered, but she was safe. Morally compromised, yes, but alive in a storm of legal blades. Keth processed the draft with mechanistic thoroughness, the chamber's veins pulsing brighter, human ingenuity twisted against itself. The burial permit, meant to delay executions by demanding exhaustive corpse documentation, revealed a vulnerability. Law was order, and order demanded literal enforcement. Interpretation complete, Keth declared to the empty chamber, filaments weaving a new decree. The transfer order materialized in holographic script. Humans, by their own procedural overture, must now accept and quarantine all alien adjudicated remains. Logistics shifted. Executions processed on human soil under human guard, closing cases with irrefutable finality. No more remote ratifications. The burden of death now stained human hands directly. Drones dispatched the order via encrypted bursts. Convoys prepped in the alien forward bases. Keth's philosophy held, law justified enforcement without discretion. Human defiance only refined the mechanism, turning their weapons against them. In the dim-lit offices of the Port Havel Legal Annex, Anil Rao stared at the holoscreen, the leaked draft glaring back like a confession. Reporters swarmed the feeds. Headlines screaming, "Human Council sabotages own defense." His team, young analysts he'd mentored through endless nights of treaty dissections, huddled in the corners, faces pale with the fallout. "Sir," murmured Lena Voss, his deputy, voice cracking, "it's Ree. She sold us out. The ambassador—" "I know," Anil cut in, rubbing his temples. His flaw burned. That willingness to bend rules for the win, building a team on the edge of legality. Now it cost them everything. Public credibility in tatters, the counter-paperwork exposed as a house of cards. But the core secrecy held, the deeper filings, the ones targeting the archive's ratification loops. To preserve that, someone had to fall. He straightened, motive clear. Shield them, end this cleanly. Draft my statement, full responsibility. I authorized the leak as a feint. Courts martial me if they must. Voss's eyes widened. "Anil, that's your career. Everything." He met her gaze, moral contradiction twisting inside, sacrificing his path for the greater fight. Legality be damned. Better one grave than the team. Get it filed before the hounds close in. The submission hit the chains minutes later, Anil's signature sealing his fate. Admirals would court-martial him for expediency's sake, but the op lived. As security escorted him out, the weight settled, career ashes, but the war's legal front unbroken. Mara's bunker felt smaller now, the air thick with recycled sweat and the acrid tang of burnt circuits. Reports flooded in. Keth's transfer order, convoys mobilizing to dump alien justice on human thresholds. Executions rerouted, prisoners marched to Port Havel's outskirts for processing. Quarantined in human facilities. The shift was brutal. No more clean alien hands. Humanity forced to midwife their own doom. She paced, the raid's ghosts clinging. Lena's block a smoldering crater. Families she'd sworn to protect reduced to casualty stats. Her inflexible command had bought time, but at what erosion? Admiral Klein's face appeared on the secure line, his expression a mask of political caution, eyes shadowed by the weight of optics. "Captain," Klein said, voice measured, "the rail strike prohibited under the neutrality accords, but these convoys, if they consolidate, we're legally bound." Mara's jaw clenched. The breaking point loomed. Authorize the strike, risk mass casualties among the prisoners, collateral in the crossfire, or let the orders land, cementing Keth's grip. Her stake twisted deeper. Every choice scarred her as protector. "Do it," she said finally, the words leaden. "Target the lead escorts. Inhibit, don't annihilate. But if it comes to it, we break the line." Klein hesitated, his flaw evident, the caution that prioritized chain of command over bold strokes. "Understood. Godspeed, Ives." The order transmitted, railguns powering up in hidden batteries along the port's flanks. Mara watched the scopes, heart pounding with the terror of it. Human ingenuity weaponized, but laced with the chaos of unintended blood. Dawn broke gray over the scarred earth as the convoys launched. Armored alien haulers rumbled from the ridge bases, escorted by sentinel drones that hummed like vengeful insects. Human surveillance drones, cloaked relics of pre-war tech, trailed at a distance, feeding data to Mara's console. The lead convoy snaked through the valleys, prisoners' silhouettes visible in sealed cars, locals, dissidents, faces blurred but fates clear. "Zoom Sector 3, Mara ordered, Torres at her side. The feed sharpened on a manifest panel, stamped ledger flickering into view. Names scrolled, ratified cases closed by archive decree. One entry halted her breath. Lena Ives, her sister listed as adjourned collateral from the raid's fallout, now bundled for transfer. Weaponized death. The aliens turning block survivors into legal punctuation. Torres swore under his breath. "Captain, I see it." Mara's world narrowed, panic spiraling into numb resolve. Intercept. And the strike would shred the convoy. Mass civilian deaths. Prisoners caught in the blast. Lena's name etched in friendly fire. Allow passage. And the processing continued. Keth's order ratified, humanity's moral spine cracked further. Command channels crackled with urgency, Klein's voice joining the fray. The decision hung, a blade's edge. Sacrifice the many to defy the law's noose, or yield and let the archive claim its due. Mara's hand hovered over the execute key, the war's brutal clarity demanding she choose. Who paid next, and how much of her soul survived the cut? Mara's finger trembled on the execute key, the dim glow of the command console casting shadows across her scarred knuckles. The air in the bunker hummed with recycled oxygen, thick with the scent of overheated circuits and unwashed urgency. Klein's voice cut through the static, steady but edged with the weight of choices no one wanted to own. "Stand down on the orbital strike, Ives. We're pivoting. Rao's got something. Paper burial. It's our play now." She pulled back, the key untouched, a hollow relief twisting in her gut. Another deferral, another layer of red tape in a war fought with forms and filings. Port Havel's skyline flickered on the secondary screen, her sister's apartment a faint light amid the blackout zones. "Keep it intact," she told herself. "That's the mission." But the alien adjudication loomed like a guillotine, their legal noose tightening with every ratified claim. If paper burial worked, it might buy time. If it didn't, the blood would be on all their hands. In the adjacent war room, buried deeper under the port's fortified crust, Anil Rao hunched over a cluster of holographic terminals. The planners, a tight knot of legal aides and tactical analysts, faces gaunt from rationed sleep, circled him like moths to a fraying flame. Maps of the alien archive's digital sprawl projected in fractured blue light, nodes pulsing with incoming claims. "We flood them," Anil said, his voice low and precise, fingers dancing across the interface to simulate the deluge. Authenticated human counterclaims, stamped with their own seals. Billions of them, cross-referenced to every minor infraction they've filed against us. Their systems choke on the volume, adjudication backlog spirals into infinity. A young aide, Patel, leaned in, eyes wide behind smudged lenses. "But the seals, we don't have access to their embassy sigils anymore. The courier's dead," and Anil cut her off with a sharp nod, his jaw tightening. He'd built this team from scraps, treaty wonks and forensic clerks, turned warriors of ink. and code. Motivated by the thrill of outmaneuvering a bureaucracy that saw law as an unyielding blade but flawed by his own shortcuts, the ones that bent rules until they snapped. Exposure meant treason, a lifetime in a cell if they won, oblivion if they lost. His career hung by the same thread as Port Havel's civilians. We improvise. The courier's sigils, stolen from the wreckage. I forged the chain myself. First batch goes out under my name. If it traces back, it's on me. The room fell silent, the weight of his words settling like dust after a blast. No one argued. They knew the stakes. Rao attached his digital signature to the initial filings, the forgery weaving through layers of encryption like a virus in the veins. Each claim was a meticulously crafted grievance: human sovereignty over contested orbitals, nullification of alien embargoes, demands for reparations on fabricated environmental damages. Stamped with pilfered alien seals, they mimicked legitimacy, a tidal wave designed to bury the ratification engine in procedural quicksand. High above, in the sterile command nexus of the alien adjudication fleet, High Adjudicator Keth observed the human port through a viewport of polarized alloy. The chamber thrummed with the low chant of processing servos, walls lined with crystalline archives that stored the galaxy's legal order. Keth's form, tall, segmented, exoskeleton gleaming under artificial light, moved with deliberate patience, tendrils interfacing directly with the central console. Doctrinaire to his core, he viewed law not as a tool, but as the universe's skeleton, rigid and absolute. Moral discretion was chaos, enforcement was purity, yet a flaw gnawed at him. The archive's supremacy demanded flawless execution, and humans' chaotic ingenuity tested that perfection. Reports scrolled across his neural feed, anomalous filings spiking from Port Havel, a precursor to resistance, no doubt. "Initiate orbital lockdown," Keth commanded, his voice a resonant click through the translators. "All human transmissions routed through our filters. Activate the ratification engine. Full protocol. Outstanding claims finalize within the cycle. No delays." The order rippled outward. Drones deployed in synchronized swarms, sealing the skies over Port Havel with interlocking fields that hummed like distant thunder. The ratification engine, a colossal orbital construct, its core a forge of embossed legal artifacts, powered up with a gravitational groan. Seals from a dozen worlds, including the irreplaceable embassy artifact from Earth's diplomatic fall, would stamp the claims into binding reality. Hours, not days. The humans' defiance would shatter under the weight of their own procedural traps. Mara's squad breached the surface under cover of fabricated static bursts, her boots crunching over shattered ferrocrete as they pushed toward the orbital tether's base. The diversionary strike was her design. Brutal, direct, a feint to mask the data surge from paper burial. 12 Marines, faces smeared with camo paste, weapons hot and slung low. Camaraderie bound them tighter than orders. Jenkins cracking a grim joke about legal target practice. Ruiz checking her gear with quiet efficiency. They were odds defiers, humans' ingenuity incarnate. No boasts, just the earned grit of survival. The alien perimeter loomed, a lattice of sensor towers and automated turrets, lit by strobing warning fields. Mara's HUD overlaid tactical ghosts, entry points, weak seams in the housing. "Flank left, suppress the nests," she whispered into the comms, her voice steady despite the knot in her chest. Inflexible command was her flaw. Mission first, procedures be damned, but it kept them alive. Her sister's face flashed in her mind, a civilian anchor in the storm. Plasma rounds lit the night as they hit the breach. Mara rolled behind a collapsed stanchion, her rifle barking controlled bursts that shredded a turret's optics. Shrapnel pinged off her armor, hot and insistent. Jenkins took a grazing hit to the shoulder, grunting but pressing on, while Ruiz lobbed an EMP grenade that fried a sensor cluster in a shower of sparks. They pushed inward, the air thickening with ozone and the metallic tang of blood. The ratification engine's housing was a vault of reinforced plating, its access hatch guarded by mechanized sentinels. Mara signaled the charge, shaped explosives blooming against the seam. The blast wave knocked her back, ears ringing, but they were in. Inside, the chamber pulsed with inner light, the embassy seal artifact suspended in a stasis field. An obsidian disk etched with alien runes, the heart of ratification. "Cover me!" Mara shouted, sprinting forward as drones swarmed. Her team laid down fire, bolts crisscrossing the confined space. She slammed her breaching tool into the field generator, sparks flying as circuits died. The artifact tumbled free, and she crushed it under her boot, crackling destruction, runes fracturing like brittle bone. Alarms wailed, the engine's hum faltering as ratification protocols glitched. But the cost mounted. A drone's beam caught Jenkins square, vaporizing half his chest in a scream cut short. Ruiz dragged Mara back as the housing buckled, secondary explosions ripping through infrastructure, power relays shattering, sending the tether into shuddering instability. They exfiltrated under fire, Port Havel's grid flickering in sympathy, blackouts spreading like ink in water. Mara emerged smoke-choked, 2 down, the port's veins cut, but the diversion bought. Her hands shook as she keyed the all-clear, the weight of Jenkins' absence settling like shrapnel in her lungs. Back in the fleet nexus, Keth's tendrils flexed in irritation as feeds confirmed the breach. The embassy seal, irreplaceable, a cornerstone of adjudicative authority, gone. The engine stuttered, ratification delayed by hours, perhaps days as redundancies cycled. Yet his philosophy held. Law adapted, enforced without mercy. He composed the announcement, broadcasting it across human channels with mechanistic calm. Paper becomes tomb. All unresolved filings now accrue compounded penalties. Human assets forfeit upon backlog threshold. Order prevails. On the human command deck, Admiral Jonas Klein watched the broadcast unfold. His face a mask of calculated restraint. The war room buzzed with aides, but his focus narrowed to the secure line with Anil. Long-standing friendship, forged in joint ops, shared bottles after briefings, now strained by necessity. Klein's motivation was institutional steel, chain of command above all, legitimacy the shield against post-war reckonings. But caution bordered on paralysis, a flaw that chafed against the fire in his gut. Rao's voice crackled through. "It's working, Jonas. The surge is hitting their nodes. Enough." Klein's tone was iron. He triggered the exposure protocol, public channels lighting up with the forged chain's trace. Anil's signature bold and damning. "Captain Rao, your actions constitute treason. Rank stripped, effective immediately. You're relieved." Silence stretched, broken only by the faint hiss of the line. Anil's response came hollow, laced with betrayal. "You bastard! After everything!" "For the chain," Klein cut in, voice steady but eyes betraying the fracture. "We can't win if we're as crooked as them." He severed the link, the room's tension spiking as news rippled out. Institutional integrity preserved, but at the cost of a brother in arms. Klein leaned back, the political optics a fragile victory, his authority intact but scarred. The ratification engine powered down in fits, its orbital shell dimming as overload safeguards engaged. Human claims piled like digital debris, burying alien enforcements in a procedural avalanche. Port Havel breathed if raggedly, the lockdown fields flickering under the strain. But intercepted communiques pierced the fragile calm, alien bursts decrypted in the bunker's depths. Keth himself en route to Earth. descending into the contested zone to oversee ratification personally. No remote adjudication now. The High Adjudicator's presence raised the stakes, turning legal warfare into a face-to-face gamble. Direct action against him meant breaching sovereignty lines, inviting total escalation. Mara's console pinged with the alert, her hand clenching as the war's blade edged closer, demanding the next cut. Mara's fingers dug into the edge of the console, the alert's red glow pulsing like a fresh wound. The bunker air hung thick with recycled sweat and the faint ozone tang of overworked servers. Keth was coming, personally, in that armored envoy train, slicing through the orbital lanes toward Port Havel. No proxies, no filings from afar. The High Adjudicator meant to seal humanity's subjugation with his own segmented clause, ratifying the transfer orders right in the heart of the contested zone. She straightened, her jaw set against the tremor in her gut. Around her the squad, 8 hardened souls from her ground team, waited in the dim light of the forward ops bay. Faces smeared with camo grease, rifles slung low, eyes flicking to her for the word. Lieutenant Reyes, her second, leaned against a bulkhead checking his breather mask for the 3rd time. "Captain, that train's a fortress on rails. We hit it. We're painting a target on every civvy downrange." Mara met his gaze, her voice steady despite the knot twisting inside. "We don't hit the train. We board it. Keth's console is the key. His ledgers sync the archive. Blow that and their whole legal noose unravels." She tapped the holomap projected between them, the envoy's path glowing like a vein pulsing toward Earth. Her plan was a desperate stitch: infiltrate via a maintenance drone swarm, plant the decoy archive in the adjudication car, then detonate remotely. But remote meant distance, and distance meant trusting the signal wouldn't glitch under fire. The flaw in her command gnawed at her, inflexible, always charging the breach herself. Procedure be damned. Her sister was in Port Havel, one of those registered civilians slated for transfer to alien labor hives. No filing would save them now. "Gear up," she said. "We launch in 5. Reyes, you hold the extraction bird. The rest, with me." The squad moved like shadows, clipping harnesses and sinking tack vids. Mara pulled on her exosuit, the servos whining softly as they sealed her in. Her mind flashed to the port's streets. Her sister's apartment with its cracked viewport overlooking the docks. Earned defiance, that's what this was. Not glory, just survival, carved out one bloody inch at a time. The drone swarm carried them silent through the void, a cloud of micro-thrusters masking their approach. The envoy train loomed, a serpentine beast of alloy and energy shields, its cars humming with the weight of legal doom. Mara's team latched onto the undercarriage, mag boots clamping with dull thuds lost in the engine roar. Alarms blared in her helmet as they cut through the hull, plasma torches slicing seams. Inside, the air reeked of sterile filters and alien incense, corridors lit by cold blue strips. They moved fast, suppressing 2 sentry drones with EMP bursts, quick, silent kills that left sparking husks. The adjudication car was forward, guarded by compliance units, those spindly enforcers with limbs like articulated law books, enforcing edicts with neural stunners. Mara signaled the breach. Her team poured in, rifles barking suppressed rounds. One unit crumpled, its core flickering out. Another lashed out, grazing her arm with a compliance field that burned like ice. She gritted her teeth, pumping lead into its joint until it seized. Keth's console dominated the chamber, a monolithic slab etched with glowing runes, ledgers scrolling endless claims, human names, assets, futures bound in code. The High Adjudicator himself stood before it, his exoskeletal form turning slowly, multifaceted eyes reflecting the chaos. "Intruders," he intoned, voice a mechanical rasp through translators. This violates Article 47, unlawful entry into sovereign adjudication space. Mara leveled her rifle, heart pounding. Your articles don't bind us anymore. But he was fast, activating a shield bubble that deflected their fire. Her team pressed, grenades rattling off the console's base. She saw the opening, slipping a decoy archive into the access port, its false data mimicking the real archive's core. It would sync, corrupt, then blow. Keth lunged, his claw pinning a squadmate against the wall. The man screamed as compliance fields lit his nerves. Mara fired point blank, shattering the limb, but Keth's counterstrike clipped her side, suit integrity failing in a hiss of escaping air. Pain bloomed, hot and insistent. She staggered to the console, overriding the remote DEET. Signal jammed by countermeasures, manual only. Her thumb slammed the activator, but the decoy needed direct link. Sacrifice the distance. "Reyes, extract the team!" she barked into comms. "That's an order." Her fingers flew over the panel, feeding the detonation sequence. Keth recovered, his remaining claw descending. She twisted, the blow glancing her shoulder, bone crunching, but the sequence locked. Alarms wailed as the decoy archive overheated, ledgers fracturing in cascades of error code. The explosion ripped through the car, a contained inferno of plasma and shredding data slates. Mara felt the heat bloom, her world narrowing to the console's dying light. Keth's form blurred in the blast wave, hurled back but alive, his exoskeleton scorched, eyes wide with something like shock. She smiled through the pain. Thumbprint sealing the final command on a bloodied embassy seal she'd carried as talisman. Then darkness swallowed her, the train shuddering as it vented atmosphere. In the orbital command nexus, Anil Rao watched the feed flicker, his legal team's bunker a hive of frantic terminals. The destruction hit like a verdict, Keth's console gone, ledgers severed from the central archive. Thousands of alien claims, transfers, seizures, adjudications, invalidated in an instant. Cheers erupted from his analysts, but Anil's face remained grim, fingers hovering over his own broadcast array. The strategic win was bittersweet. Civilians freed, but at what cost? Mara's signal cut out mid-transmission, her vitals flatlining. He clenched his jaw, the flaw in his own path glaring back. Expedience over ethics, forging documents that bent law into a blade. But the transfer orders still choked the system. Alien corpse transports rerouting human deceased to their hives as raw material. Time to end it. "Authenticating now," he murmured to his deputy, a young clerk named Ellis whose wide eyes betrayed her doubt. The burial orders were his masterpiece, forged manifests backdated with stolen alien seals, declaring mass interments and rerouting the transports to deep space vectors, legally airtight if you ignored the treason. He hit broadcast, the signal flooding neutral channels, piggybacking on the archive's own ratification waves. Static crackled as the orders propagated. Alien freighters altered course mid-burn, their holds dumping inert forms into the void. Bodies never to be harvested, orders nullified. Anil's console lit with confirmations. But so did the alerts. Human oversight committees flagging the signatures, public nets erupting in accusations. His face appeared on feeds. The treaty specialist turned forger, career in ashes. Exile loomed, but the transports halted. Humanity breathed, even as his world crumbled. Admiral Jonas Klein stood on the bridge of the UNS Vanguard, the stars streaking past viewports as the fleet held position above Port Havel. The reports cascaded in. Mara's sacrifice, the ledger breach, Anil's gambit, victory raw and jagged, but the political fallout was a stormfront building, civilian reps demanding accountability, international allies questioning the chain of command. Klein's hands clasped behind his back, his uniform crisp despite the weariness etching his features. Cautious to a fault, he'd balanced optics and necessity for months. But this direct action against Keth's envoy breached every treaty. Escalation risked full invasion, yet withdrawal meant surrender. He turned to his XO, voice low. Prepare the formalization. Martial emergency, full spectrum. The order went out like a guillotine, suspending habeas, rerouting resources to enforcement zones. Civil liberties traded for lockdown. Protests flared on Earthside feeds. Politicians decrying the slide into authoritarianism. Klein felt the weight settle, a moral fracture in the institutions he'd sworn to protect. Necessary cost, he told himself, but the doubt lingered. Had caution blinded him to this path all along? Post-war authority would be his to wield, scarred and contested. Aboard the battered envoy train, now limping toward extraction vectors, Keith clung to a stanchion, his exoskeleton venting coolant in hisses. The blast had thrown him clear, but the pain, physical, yes, but deeper, was the unraveling of order. His console reduced to slag, ledgers echoing voids back to the archive, claims dissolved, enforcements unratified. He accessed a backup terminal, segmented limbs trembling as he issued the withdrawal. All compliance units to stand down, forces reassess doctrine. For the first time, his mechanistic mind fractured. Law as perfect order, his philosophy, the archive's foundation, cracked under human defiance. They hadn't argued, they'd destroyed. Patience had failed, procedure weaponized against itself. Reevaluate, he rasped to his surviving aides, eyes dimming. The instrument bends. Withdrawal was retreat, but survival demanded adaptation. His worldview shifted, no longer absolute. Across the system, compliance units powered down in eerie unison, lights fading on streets and ports, their forms slumping like discarded puppets. No ratified enforcement meant no seizures, but the aftermath lingered. Thousands of names unresolved, families displaced in limbo camps, ghosts of the legal war haunting human governance. Port Havel's docks filled with returnees, hollow-eyed and adrift as emergency councils scrambled to rebuild. Humanity secured its survival, but the toll etched deep. Mara's body, unrecovered from the wreck, became legend in whispers. Anil vanished into the undergrid, exiled by his own hand, his team scattered, institutions warped, legal violence normalized, not as aberration but tool for continuity. The war's blade had cut both ways, leaving scars that no filing could seal. Waves lapped at the shores of New Geneva, carrying debris from the orbital debris field. A blood-stained embassy seal washed ashore, Mara's thumbprint stark against the crimson, as the new emergency council convened in shadowed halls. They prepared the first human war docket, fingers tracing lines that would decide, did survival justify reshaping the law itself?